up your engine!
Well, here we go. Another BMW recall. Now, this one is for all their plug-in hybrids. There's a risk of the battery fire, and they're telling people do not use the electric aspect of it. Don't use the paddle shifters. Here we go. BMW with their lack of quality control. Yet again, BMW is advising their customers not to recharge them, not to use the shift paddles, because the batteries might start on fire. Pretty much every plug-in hybrid that BMW made in 2020 is going to be recalled. This includes the Mini Countryman too, because BMW, they really make the Minis. They own them. They're using the same battery packs, and they're having problems with them. BMW says they don't know of any accidents or injuries yet, but they're saying that they're plug-in hybrids that had thermal events. Talk about doublespeak. Obviously, they're talking about it started on fire. But they call it a thermal event. Now, we live in a doublespeak world of PC-ness. That's too much, you know? Instead of firefighters, what are they going to call them? Thermal event fighters? I mean, we're getting to a point of absurdity here. They probably didn't make the battery right in a bunch of them. They had excess pieces of metal and stuff get inside the battery cells that can short them out. And the people that make the battery, coincidentally enough, are Samsung. They're Samsung batteries. The same people that had the exploding catch-on-fire phones back in the past. Remember that? That was the Galaxy Note 7 exploding ones back in 2016. Same company. Gee, you'd think they'd figure out how to make batteries by now. Now, they say they don't have a remedy yet, so they're telling you in the time being, if you own one of these plug-in BMW or Mini hybrids, don't charge it up. Don't plug it into the charging machine. If you've never owned one of these cars, it's like anything else. When you have a low battery and you plug it in, especially if it's a fast charger, the battery tends to get hot. You know, I noticed that even in a cell phone. If I try to charge it fast, you can feel it getting warm. Well, imagine if you plugged in your BMW plug-in hybrid and then the thing started on fire because it overheated. So, if you own one of those, don't plug it in for a while. Of course, if you're smart, you wouldn't have bought one in the first place. Well, here's a list of cars that are the most probable to have powertrain failure, meaning engine or transmission breaking down. Number 10 on the list is the 2010 GMC Acadia. They generally seem to have engine and transmission problems starting at about 106,000 miles. So you're not getting much of a lifespan out of those things. The next one, not surprising, is another GM product, the 2006 Buick Lucerne, which also has catastrophic failure starting at about 116,000 miles. And number 3 on the list is the 2003 Acura MDX. And that's transmission problems, especially the all-wheel drive ones. But they don't generally start till 190,000 miles, so they're better than the GM products. Now, the next one, of course, is another GM, the 2010 Cadillac SRX. Around 130,000 miles, the engines have a tendency of blowing up. It was the only one that ever had a 2.8-liter turbocharged V6 engine. And they dropped the turbo after that year, so that'll tell you something about that. Kind of interesting, a lot of these are GM products. Now, the next one is, guess what? A Fiat Chrysler product, a 2006 Jeep Wrangler. Turns out that the four-cylinder engines generally seem to fall apart at about 150,000 miles. No surprise there. Number 7 on the list is 2010 Chevy Equinox. Yes, another GM product. Gee, isn't it interesting that their engines and transmissions fall apart more than any others? Now, these start to fall apart at 84,000 miles. And that's mainly the base 2.4 four-cylinder engine that has engine problems, start to fall apart, burning oil. Just poorly designed and poorly built engines. Now, number 8 is the 2008 Mini Cooper. What a surprise. Mini's on the list of cars that engines and transmissions fall apart on. The four-cylinder engines start to come apart at 122,000 miles or so. That's what these reports say, but I've seen them come apart at 70,000 miles. So they're not impressive at all. Now, number 9 on the list is the 2001 Chrysler PT Cruiser. No surprise. Made in Mexico, one of the junkiest cars ever. They have the same thing. Their engines blow starting at 100,000 miles, but I've seen them blow long before 100,000 miles. Those were real crapper cars. And rounding out the list is the 2010 Audi A4 with the 2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine. Those are horrible engines. They say it starts at 107,000 miles, but I've seen them before that. They burn oil, the engines blow up. A few weeks ago, I had a guy told me one of those stupid turbocharged Audi A4s, and guess what? The engine had locked up. He was driving down the highway, it stopped running. He told it to me, and I couldn't turn the engine with my giant cheater barn socket and said, your engine's locked up, junk the stupid thing, it's not worth fixing. So there's 10 of the top cars that the engine or the transmissions fall apart in. Stay away from them all. The last petrol head says, I got problems with reverse gear. I'm driving my friend's standard transmission car, and I'm having a hard time getting reverse, but it goes in all the other gears. It's not my car, but what can I do to drive it without damaging it? A lot of times, when your clutch is starting to wear, the first gear that's hard to get into is reverse. So odds are the clutch is wearing out. It's not your car. You're not going to spend $1,000 or more putting a clutch in it. But you don't want to damage anything. So here's what you can do. And I've done it for ages. I show my customers when they have a car that's wearing, if they don't want to spend any money, is this. The car's turned off, right? Okay. Put your foot down on the clutch with the car turned off. Then put it in reverse. Now it's in reverse. Then with your foot pushed down on the clutch, start the car. Since it's already in reverse, it should go in perfectly fine. And then you can drive it that way. And you just realize whenever you're going to back up, first shut the car off, put it in reverse, then push on the clutch and start it again. Now, if you do try that and you have it in reverse and the clutch is pushed all the way down and you start it and it starts jerking backwards even though your foot's on the clutch, then the clutch is too far worn and you're going to have to get it replaced. Or don't back up anywhere. Park always so you're pointed out and you don't have to back up to get away. I had a guy like that that actually had reverse gear broken in the car. And it was an automatic. It wasn't a standard. And he would just park the car when he never had to back it up. And if he did and he had friends, they'd just push it and then drive forwards. Uncle D says, Scotty, I'm looking to buy a 2001 Honda Accord sedan from used car lot. 168,000 miles, 4-cylinder. They're asking $2,000, but they said there's a slight transmission fluid leak. What do you think? I think you should run away from it. The weakest things of those are their automatic transmissions. If it has a transmission leak, it's probably been leaking for a while. If you have a transmission and it leaks and it gets low on fluid, it doesn't have enough lubrication and the transmission wears even faster. So odds are that transmission is on the way out. In order to rebuild that transmission, you would end up paying twice what you're paying for the car. A good rebuild on one of those is about $4,000 and up. If you're paying $2,000 for it, you'd never put that kind of money in it. So walk away from that one and look for one that doesn't have a problem. Now, if it wasn't leaking, could be okay. But once they leak, they run low on fluid, they overheat inside, they don't lubricate right. You don't want to buy somebody else's problem. Jack S. said, I keep getting a misfire code PO301. I changed the plugs and coils. It's an 05 Dodge with 64,000 miles. PO301 is misfire cylinder number 1. You can get misfires for many reasons. You change the coils and the plugs. Didn't solve it. All right? Understand, it could be the fuel injector. If it's not spraying the right amount of fuel in that cylinder, it's going to misfire. Take the cylinder number 1 injector, put it on like cylinder 3 and put the 3 on 1. If the mist then moves to 3, you know you got a bad fuel injector. Easy test. You want to hope it's something that simple. It can also be a problem with the piston rings on number 1. It could be the head gasket starting to blow on cylinder number 1. It could be the intake gasket manual has a leak, and that's making it misfire on cylinder 1. Could be a lot of things. Pray it's just the injector, and swapping them out shows that, it's just a bad fuel injector. Because there are a lot of things that can make a misfire. Even the computer can make a misfire. If it's got a bad driver circuit for number 1, it won't fire right and it'll misfire. So it can get complex. Pray it's just a fuel injector. So test it, like I said, and replace it. If the mist moves to where you moved it, you know that's the problem. 386 says, I got Dex Cool in my GM car and I want to switch it. Could I put another coolant in? Well, yes, you can put any kind of modern coolant in it as long as you take all the old coolant out. But I wouldn't waste my time. Dex Cool had problems, but that was way in the past. That was decades ago. They didn't make it right, and I had customers coming with GM products that all use Dex Cool, and they'd be all rust and corrosion, and the cars would only be a couple of years old. Well, let's face it, nothing wears out in a couple of years like that. That was just made wrong. The formulation wasn't correct. Now, that was decades ago. I don't see that in the modern ones. They changed the formulation. They really don't have any problems. So I really personally wouldn't worry about it. But if you are, all you got to do is flush everything that's out and use any modern long life coolant. It'll work perfectly fine. If you're not having any problems, I wouldn't bother now because the Dex Cool formulation changed a long time ago. And they don't have problems anymore. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.